We are going to start on Spinnet Goes. Spinnet Goes, they are a completely new structure from PokerStars. In a Spinnet Go, there will be 3 players entering, and they will be fighting from a prize pool ranging from just twice the buy-in to 1,200 times the buy-in. And as you can probably understand, the 1,200 times the buy-ins are quite rare, and there are a lot of steps in between. And these tournaments are all with a blind lobby, so you'll never know who you'll get against. And in the lobby you can select, I think, up to 5 games that you can register on at the one time. But if you want to play, for example, 10 tables, the tables are filling up really quickly. So in these games, the $1 games, they are raked with 7%, $3 games raked with 5%, $7 games raked 4%, and all these upper bound games from $7 to $30, they are raked the same. The rake is about twice that you might see in Hyper Turbo Heads Up Sit and Go, and about the same that you can see in 6 Max Hyper Turbo or 9 Max Hyper Turbo. And there will be, in case you are interested more on the mathematics, there is an article on our pages, www.pokerimania.com/forum. There is the Mathematics of Spin and Goes article, and I'd recommend most of you to read it if you are interested in Spin and Goes. It's going to tell you a lot on what's happening in the Spin and Goes and how the structure works. And we might brush that during the coaching session as well. And they have made it, I think, quite interestingly that you can see some of the games that are, or the top game on every buy-in level that it's running. And when you observe, you'll see what the table looks like exactly. So this is 1,200 times buy-in game running on $1 level. We can see that it's a brown one. Then there is 10 times game running on $15 level. This is deep green one. Then there's 25 times. This is violet, I think. And then there is going to be 240 times game, and I think that's Ferrari red. So all the different games are with a different kind of background. And as you can see in here, PokerStars is also showing you all the last 1,200 times buy-in games that are running right now. And as you can see that there is a ton of these running every hour. So this is a really popular structure right now, and I think we are going to be the first ones that are going to do a live coaching on these games. So then we can start and see how the Spin and Goes look. And I'm starting up with one, but we are getting the next table running pretty much instantly. So this is what the Spin and Go looks like when you start it up. And you can see that now we didn't get lucky. We got $14. And oh, Neo said that it's purple. And now we can see what happens in the next one, and it's almost always it's going to be frustrating for you, because about 75% of these games are going to be 2 times games. And in these games I'd say it's going to be interesting to see the players as well, because in these games opponents in general, they don't like to fold. And well, I take it even if it's a 2 times buy-in game only. In general, I think the not worst strategy in these games will be to play weak tight. A weak tight player will get eliminated pretty quickly. And in these games, if you are complete maniac, you are a bit better off than if you are in many other structures, because in these survival doesn't have any value, only chips have value. So in other sit and go structures, if you are completely maniacing it up, it's going to be horrible for your ROI, but in these games, if you are winning chips, you can be as maniac as you want. And I think these games they're going to be awesome for all of those that are playing on mobile devices. And I forgot to put the Hold'em Manager on, or Poker Tracker on, so... And in these games, people aren't folding pre-flop that much, but they are folding somewhat more on post-flop, so we are not going to be as aggressive in certain spots as we are going to be in another structure or in a normal sit and go, because there is, like, we can never give ICM pressure to other opponents. In these games, there is no ICM pressure because there is no ICM. It's going to be only... And everything we do, we are going to do to win chips. And Korpistory, if he heard right that these games would be absolutely wonderful while 1 to 3 tabling endgame MTTs as extra volume, because easy chip EV situations. Yeah, I think you can say that. And even this index hasn't raised at all during the start of this session. I'm going to be shipping it in with 8s. Usually with 8s I'm miles ahead of opponent general range in that spot. And in heads up situations it depends a bit, that there are opponents that are going to be folding a ton of their big blinds, and those opponents we are going to be attacking mercilessly. And then there are going to be opponents that doesn't like to fold at all. That I have seen opponents that never folded in heads ups for something like 40 hands. So it will be really interesting. And because these are running really well right now, practically all the games that are currently running are going to be against different opponents, so you'll probably never have good sample on any opponent. And now we got first one that's higher than 2x, and this is how a 4x table looks like. And we're checking off, we are you can never say it that way around, never. With king check off, we are going to be raising 2 limpers. We are having pretty much good flops that we can play really aggressively on. And 2 aces and a 4 unfortunately isn't one of those, because when we are 3-handed, I don't expect that we are getting folds pretty much at all. And as I said, that these games are probably the best games to play on a mobile device. Because of the blind lobby, you can always register to the games. At first I thought that the games that are going to be... that the games that would be the best in a mobile device would be something like Hyper Turbo heads-ups. But if you're playing on a mobile device, you'll need to play something like $60 heads-ups to even have a chance to register to a tournament. But in these tournaments you can register to these quite easily. And as we can see here, it will be a lot about heads up. Like right now I have played about a bit over 1,000 of these Pinnet Goes. And I think that I have a bit more heads-up hands than I have 3-handed hands. And if I looked it right, these games are decided about 52% of the money moves in heads-up and about 48% of the money moves in 3-handed. And these are going to be really close. If you have played heads-up Hyper Turbos, I think the amount of hands that you'll get at every effective stack depth is going to be really similar than what you would expect in a heads up hyper turbo. And here we are going to value bet, so, and even when the opponent shoves, when there's going to be a lot of gut shots, a lot of straight draws, a lot of flush draws that are, so we are going to be calling with any top pair. Unfortunately, there seems to be also the top pair, the better top pair as an option for him. But there's a lot of other hands that beat us, even though this time we were pretty crushed when we called. And these games are wonderful because no matter what the time is, you'll get 10 of these running pretty instantly. And chip leader, you did miss a bit when I discussed about what the structure looks like. But there shouldn't be anything essential that hasn't been discussed yet. So, and now we are spinning again. And it's always going to be slowing down when it's at that 8,400. So if you are tilting a bit when you are playing slot machines, you are going to be tilting a lot on that spin and go. Spin and go spins. And yeah, we got some tech issues at the start, so that was pretty bad for us. And if you have any questions on these structures, on these games, please ask. Here, because we are having showdown equity, the opponent isn't that aggressive. We are going to try to get to a cheap showdown rather than betting bottom pair here. And when opponent overbets a ton on the river, I think that's going to be almost always a straight or a flush. Especially when it's an opponent that hasn't been betting that much beforehand. And as I said earlier on, that you are probably not going to have good samples on anyone. The most I have on a player is, I think, 80 or 90 hands. And the 80 or 90 hands, it's just, and in here there are two possible flush draws, so there are a lot of other hands than a 9, and there are also weaker 10s that could be shoving here. And unfortunately, we got against the straight, but then we luck boxed. And as Kuberi said, that the near miss is an important concept when designing a gambling software, because near misses will, and there are certain players that will, the near misses will trigger the same kind of euphoria than if you are hitting your goal. And I think that's pretty interesting, that it could have been a pretty good trait in the natural selection, that if you are having a near miss, that you are getting the euphoria so that you could try again. But if you are talking about gambling or games in general, it's going to be a bad trait for you. And in here, you are not getting any style points, so whatever you can do that will make your opponent put most money in is going to be the one route you should take. And as you can see, these games are quite quick. On average, one of these games is going to take about 6 minutes. So you'll get to see quite a few games during this coaching session. Actually, I could have second barrel. In here, it's also a bit nasty. I could raise fold this, or I could call this, because there could be some weaker pairs that could even call there, and In here now we are in full value betting mode against two guys. And Corbis said, are these games soft? I must say that it depends. I think these games are soft in regards of what kind of players are in these games. But with the rake, and because there's no ICM, there is like no opportunity for opponents to make ICM mistakes. And also because about 2% of the prize pool gets distributed if you are winning the 1200 times buy-in game. And when you are likely to hit the game or win the game like once in 60,000 games on average, or once in 50 or once in 6,000 games, you'll pretty much know that you need to beat these games. If you're playing $7 or higher games, you need to beat these games at least 6% before rake. If you are beating these games at 6% before rake, then you are breaking even when you are not hitting the highest jackpot. And that's the cruel part of these, that the highest jackpot is effectively rake until you hit it. And yeah, as Kubery explained pretty much the same thing that I tried to explain myself. And Kubery has studied the gambling in school, and I have just read it because it's interesting and it's my profession, so it's going to be something that's important to understand. And as I said, that even though it might look stupid in the concept of gambling world, that near misses will get the same euphoria or same brain activity or even better brain activity than the hits. As I said earlier, it could have been a really, really important or really good trait in life, in other life than gambling. I'm going to be bluffing the river here. I can't represent much here, but I don't think the opponents in these games are going to be reading that much on what I'm representing, and they are mostly playing their own cards. And when I'm having just jack high, I think that I can get my opponents to give up some of their weakest pairs, ace highs, queen highs. And Neo asked that if the game goes to push fold, how do you come up with your ranges? They are going to be mainly about they're going to be a bit adjusted Nash ranges on most situations. I haven't got enough data to completely adjust, but you'll see that practically there will be some situations that are going to be important to master. Like from pushing point of view, this small blind against big blind is a very important phase to master, because the exact same situation happens, especially when you have a shove stack. This exactly same situation happens when you are three-handed as well. If you are pushing, the situation is exactly the same as it's in heads up. And if you are min-raising, it's a bit different. So you should push more when you are in three-handed and min-raise more when you are heads up, because even though the pushes are mathematically exactly the same situations, min raises aren't, and they aren't because the positions get mixed post flop. So in heads up, when you are on a small blind, you are in position post flop, but three-handed, when you are going to be on the small blind and raise, you are out of position post flop, so there is more incentive for an opponent to call you on three-handed big blind, or than he would at heads up big blind. But it's actually interesting that opponents are still, they are like min raising about the same range from three-handed small blind than they are at heads up, even though the rest of the hand goes completely differently. So chip leader, the purple color tag represents for me a player that I like to play against. And those players I have seen a lot in these games. And so right now I'm adjusting on this heads up. I'm adjusting that I'm not raising as much. So I'm not raising any 2 against this guy when he doesn't fold it nearly enough on heads up. But on this guy, I'm unsure yet. I'm raising a lot until I know what the opponent is playing. So something like Jack 3 off that I'm pretty unlikely to hit anything good. I'm just folding. A hand that would be pretty hard to play, not profitable to shove. And if the opponent is not... Even though I have position advantage on later streets, it's going to be still a quite horrible hand to play. And here when I raised, I see better ace king. I don't think that opponent will hit that often. He'll have more of the middling, more of the mid cards and less aces in his range. And this isn't a bad situation if my opponent limps a lot and I'm raising a lot, because then I'm playing a raised pot when I'm in position post flop and the opponent is playing a small pot when he's in position. So in general I should be winning after a while. So, and this is why heads up is important in these games, or it's not just important, it's essential. And of course, also when you are pretty unlikely to never see an opponent again, it doesn't matter that much what you are doing or how exploitable you are playing or how balanced you are playing. You should be exploiting your opponents to the maximum. Here I actually think that I'm going to have the best hand, and I think that I can get my opponent to call with something worse. And in here, there might have been some value to shove there, because only an ace could be a better hand at that point. So that's probably misplayed a bit by me. And as you see, the opponents are generally, they are quite passive, and we are going to see multitude of different opponents. We are going to see nits in these games. We are going to see opponents that are completely crazy, and we are going to see opponents that are tight and aggressive, like you would see the most opponents in a sit and go, and we are going to see opponents that are loose and passive. So these games in general, they are easy to play, but they aren't that easy to win in, because it's going to take only about 20 hands on average per game. So you'll got only 20 hands a game, and you'll need to beat about 6% rake during that time. And you'll also get additional variance included in these games. Like, these games are variance monsters, because you can be the worst player in the world. If you are hitting 1,000 times sit and go and you are winning it, you can be winning for a long time. Like, you can be winning for, I'd say, like a recreational player that probably plays something like 200 games a month. He can, if he hits the 1000x game, he can be a winning player for a month easily. Oh, not for a month, but for a year easily in these games. And on the other hand, even if you are winning something like 5%, according to my simulations, if you are winning 5%, after 10,000 games, you can still end up with 350 buy-ins. Still with a 350 buy-in loss, so you'll practically need to play something like 25,000 games if you are 5% winner in these games to reliably win money. This is slightly interesting because it fills the flush and any ace, any king is ahead of me. I'm going to fold that. And in general, I think when the average player in these games is going to play pretty loose passively, then my strategy needs to be adjusted for the average player. And when I don't know anything about the players, I'm thinking about the average player. And now when I'm flopping top pair and opponent just carries on betting big, it's going to be a nasty spot to give up, but I think it's a mandatory spot to give up. In here, I think that I have the best hand most of the time. And there is so much in stake that I don't even need to have the best hand nearly always. I just need to have the... And the opponent folded. Wow. And now I'm trying to just bet the biggest that I think my opponent will pay. And I don't mind about balancing in these games at all because, as I said, I have played 1000 games. And there is one opponent that I have played 10 tournaments against, and the next one is like 7 tournaments. And then there are like 5 or 6 guys with 5 tournaments. And some of those have started that we have probably pressed at the same time to register for 5 tournaments at once. But as you can see that these games are really action-packed because the ranges are going to be really wide. And you are going to get action. And now I'm trying to bet as high as I think that the opponent will call. Even though there is a flush possibility, there's a straight possibility. I think that the most likely hand for opponent, even when the opponent rebets, the most likely hand would still be a top pair or something on the river. And Neo1186 asks that, do I believe that spin and goes are directing recreational players away from other structures? Yeah. For something that I enjoyed playing 9-max hypers, and right now I noticed that 9-max hypers are running really, really badly. Like, most people thought that the 6-max hypers would be the games that are going to suffer the most. But the 6-max hypers are running pretty well, but the 9-max hypers are... If the games are something that are close of, like how much they are running, I think they are affected by spin and goes a lot. I don't know about the long term because now it's like spin and goes are now they are like the new and shiny toy. So I have seen the tons of players trying out these games, and there is a lot of marketing push behind spin and goes that PokerStars sends out emails on have you tried these spin and goes yet, and on the lobby there is like win big fast. That's actually right now there, so there is a huge marketing push. In here I'm going to push against the limper. And in general, I advocate on pushing a lot against limpers in these games. Mostly the limpers are going to limp with a weak range. Oh. And in here I think that I'm having the best hand, and I don't know that if I'm going to get value enough there, but I think that my opponent can bluff there some of the time, but no. He got like the minimum amount of value for his hand, and that was a Table Ninja bet. Table Ninja doesn't work completely with these games, and there's something that annoys me a lot, like now I'm trying to keep the focus on the right side window. When this spin is complete, I think the focus will shift to the other window. Like now. Even though it shouldn't steal the focus, but these spinet goes are stealing the focus all the time. And Corbitor asked that what is the biggest pot that I have had? I have been in one 25 times game, but I lost it, so I lost in the heads up and I shoved something like Jack 7 off. And my opponent snap called with aces, and that was that. But out of those 1000 games, I have won 10 times the 10x games, and 10x games are probably, they're going to be probably the one game that we are, the highest game that we are seeing. But I think for Neo, the better question would be that are Spinet Goes going to be a structure that's going to get new players to play and recreationals to have fun? Because these are fun, they are quick, and there is a lot of variance included, so even a player that knows nothing about poker can win from these games. So, and in here, if I bet the flop and I bet the turn, I was an idiot. But, and of course, these are so mobile bound. Like there is not a good mobile sit and go offering of the games. Like no game on sit and go or tournament side is a good game to play on mobile before these Spinet Goes, because these games are like, all of these games are going to end at about 15 minutes, and like the average length is 6 minutes, so these are something that you can play on your mobile phone for fun. And there are also games that are easy to start and the lobby works with those. Like these are like Zoom Poker, which is fun for cash game players on a mobile device. And there hasn't been anything for tournament poker players before these. And I think for these games, like right now, I think that I have won something like 15 games on first hand. So, like the first hand is a 3-way all-in. And I have seen some awesome hands there. I think the worst was when the button shoved with something like 9-4 off for the first hand. But I think that's like the point for sit and goes as a whole, that are Spinet Goes going to be good or bad? It depends that are we going to get new players to try out other sit and goes after Spinet Goes, or is it going to be just one directional? And as I said, that right now I hate what these Spinet Goes have done for the games that I like to play, but I don't know. I think that these games are also really aimed towards recreational players, because these are really, really, really hard games to play professionally. As I took out on my mathematics article, the mathematics of Spinet Goes on pokerimania.com, on the forums, if you are playing these games professionally, you'll really need to withstand a lot of variance, and you'll need to be among the best players in the game, and you'll need to play huge volume for it to be worth it. And I'm trying to just get more money in. This is going to be an awesome pot because there are kings and jacks, so there should be, even though we hit quads, there should be opponents that are hitting that flop well as well. And if the opponent had a jack there, then the king probably wasn't such a good card on turn. But in these games, I think the optimal strategy is to play pretty aggressively, but you need to take into account that the opponents are going to be generally really loose passive, so you are not getting that much easy chips than you would get from something like a 6 max hyper or 9 max hyper sit and go. And there are no antes in play. So these games will require some adjustment for most players. If this player hasn't called, I would have shoved this king 7 suited for sure against this player. But when there is such a big stack, it's going to make it a bit harder. And in here, because this player is such an aggressive player, I would have called both of these guys. And if he folds, I'm going to be calling. And when he calls, I think that he will have king so often that there's no way I can profitably call with just ace high. And I think one reason that PokerStars has been a good site has been that on those regular games that they are having so many like good, how would I say it, so many good runs, and there have been so many inspirational poker stories. Like there have been so many inspirational poker stories about a player that learned to play in his mother's basement and then suddenly started winning a ton, and when he was just 19 or 20 he did play for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And those stories are like really good for marketing poker. And probably the only thing that I'm worried about is Spinet Ghost, or what I'm most worried that in these games there will be such stories without a need for a poker pro. Because on all of these games it's going to be, you can win up to 30,000 right now, and when they're going to get these up to 100, there's going to be like, you can win 100,000 by playing poker, and the game will likely take only about 6 minutes. And in here, normally in a sit and go, this would be a harder call, but in here, because of no ICM, you are going to require to call a lot of those. And now in here, when there's going to be a straight on board, I'm just trying to value bet really big, because some opponents will call for a draw. So I'm trying to get the most money out of this guy. And Chip Leader says that, yeah, the Chris Moneymaker effect. Yeah, but there are also, I think that when the poker boom was at its highest, like most guys knew someone that played poker, and there were poker players on news and everything. So, and Chuckle got a question about PokerStars hotkeys. Shoot. But I think it's this, or it has been easy for PokerStars to be a site that has been so much for players, because they got some really good stories out of real poker players. And this is something that I'm most worried because these games, as I said, that they don't need professional poker players to have those great stories. They are just needing this one spinning wheel that you can win a ton of money with. And as you can see that most of the time it lands with the $14 on $7. Spin it goes. And when an opponent just min-raise 3-bets you, you need to be cautious, and you'll need to be also cautious, and you'll need to be pretty much calling it all the time, because even though the opponents are generally having a tight range when they are 3-betting min-raises, you're going to require so little equity there. And on the flop, I got for a check raise there. I think that if my opponent is... And I'm going to have a decent equity there against everything else but except sets or a higher flush draw. But there is so few of those in the opponent's range, and there are some folds that are going to make it really profitable. And Shakal got a question on that. Overlaid my tables during the last days and made a hotkey on go to next table. Yeah. And here it's a great flop for us. We got a open-ended straight draw and a flush draw, so we are having like Omaha-like amount of outs here. I think like as I can show you that it works, but it will work a bit differently than... I think that you have the wrong hotkey, like you have to go to first action table. This one will go just from the first action table to the second action table. But this activate next table and activate previous table, those are going to be the hotkeys that you can use to run through your whole stack. So this is something that it's not the go to first action table, it's the activate next table and activate previous table that you should use. And now I can't spin when this hotkey settings window is open, so Shakal, please tell me when you have seen this so I can close the hotkey settings and go back to spinning. And I think that if you are having just two hotkeys that you are going to have space for, this guy is pretty active, and I'm only going to require about 30-70% of equity, and if I'm not dominated I'm going to get it. And I think that their opponent will have something like Queen 10, Queen Jack. And Shakal, I think that you'll need just one of those. I'm unsure that if there is going to be... Well, let's get 3 tables running for a while, so then we can see, like, I have on my mouse the activate previous table and activate next table, and it's running through all of these tables pretty well. And only the activate next table, like right now, when I don't have the first action table that... And now when I have a first action table, it always goes back to it. But it doesn't go deeper than that. And when this opponent seems to be a really needy player, I'm not going to be shoving here. If here would be this comeback 2008 guy on small blind, then I would be shoving, but not against this guy. And now we are having an open-ended straight draw. That's going to be pretty nice, because if we are hitting it, it's going to be only a 10 required for a straight, and we are having a better straight than that, and the opponent gives us really great odds to draw. I think in this situation it's about balls, and I thought that my opponent will have something with some kind of showdown equity here, and I was unsure that can I get my opponent off his showdown equity. And this Spinet goes will be interesting, because I think Big Tunna 99 is a really good sit and go player, and I think he plays a lot higher than $7 games usually. And now he's here in a $7 Spinet go. So sometimes you are going to have some, I think like the first 3 Spinet goes I played, I had one Spinet go, $7 Spinet go with 3 supernovas on the table. Like, and I thought that people said these are going to be soft, and then there would be one Spinet go with 1 supernova and 1 good sit and go reg, and me. And I think one with me and a SNG reg and an unknown. And I was then like, screw this. If I'm going to play blind lobbies against supernovas and SNG regs, I'm going to be burning money a ton. And Kupas didn't sit and go, Spinet go a great game for heads-up players. It's going to be a great game in the sense that you are going to really, a lot of the skills are going to be instantly translated from heads up to Spinet goes. The thing that I think that will deter most heads up regulars from Spinet goes will be that I think that in general you would require about 5 times as much bankroll to play the same level of Spinet goes than you would for a same buy-in heads up sit and go. So that's something that's going to be pretty hard for. I'm going to be floating this against Big Tunna. I don't believe that he's going to have a decent hand. Like, he can hit something there, and if he would have... Actually, I think that this guy is going to be a tablet player, and he's going to be calling even a shove. But I think that, like, for the heads-up players, they are used to playing the lowest variance game there is. And these games that would be just a 3-handed game without this whole Spinet go stuff would be about the same type of game than a 6-max or a 9-max Hyper Turbo. Variance-wise and rake-wise as well. But when you add the spins, you are going to have a... Let's say you are going to have an interesting game. And I can't see that in this game we could have had like anything else happen than we are going all in that if Big Tunna doesn't fold to us, and I think that he next to never will. But if I'm thinking that which players will have the easiest time adjusting, they are going to be the heads-up guys, for sure. I had a lot of adjustment period when I started this Spinet goes, because in my head when I see 3 players, then I'm thinking that we are in the bubble and now we need to concentrate. And also that I'm probably playing the 3-handed, even still I'm going to play it a bit too passively, and I'm doing some equity mistakes because I'm used to ICM, so And Chip Leader said that didn't Crazy Elior made fourth attempt at the V-Coup main, or would that be fourth attempt or fourth at V-Coup main? I don't know, but if someone plays on a tablet, it usually is that it's going to be a recreational player. And usually I think that the tablet and phone players are going to be a bit worse players on average than a player playing on a computer. Fourth place 800,000. Well, not too shabby. I think that you'll need to play a lot of Spinnet Goes to win 800,000. A lot of Spinnet Goes. And Neo asked a good general question: how do I deal with making mistakes? If you would have asked the previous me how would I deal with making mistakes, it would be the smash the mouse and be completely tilted, but that's something that you'll need to work for to get better at. And one thing that I have noticed that will help me a lot in that regard is to breathe deep, especially if the mistake is really stupid. Have some deep breaths and try to just concentrate on relaxing for a while. But it's like, it's not, and I think it's going to be the best if you are thinking that if you are making a mistake, it's going to just cost you more if you are not snapping out of it, and if you are not snapping out of it, because then you are making more mistakes, and the more mistakes you make, the more money you are going to lose with that. So that's something that could also help you getting back to what you should be. Really interesting race on the river from I think when it's such an overbet, it's going to be a value bet pretty much always. And this J-League kid is actually has been such an aggressive three better, but I think it's really hard, and that King 8 is going to be such a borderline call. And as I said, that these games are going to be really hard to adjust because you have practically no hands on your opponent, so it's going to be that you are going to be guessing most of the time. And I think for Neo that I must say that I'm feeling that it's going to be better to be unlucky than make a mistake, because I'm not that bothered about being unlucky, or I'm not that bothered about if someone sucks out on me. That's something that I can't do anything about it anyway. So why should it bother me? But when I'm making a mistake, I'm always getting slightly angry at myself, and it takes some time to collect myself, but it's going to be pretty much on breathing, trying to relax, reminding myself that the quicker I'm getting myself in shape, the quicker I'll stop losing more money from this mistake. And I think that's the route that helps me. With the second pair, I don't think that we can fold, even if this looks like a really a value play. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Getting squeezed on. And you'll probably see that why these games can end at the first hand. And I hope we'll get some game that will end at the first hand. As you saw from the hand history I posted to my blog, that I had a 10x sit and go that I played it was the focus was stolen. I was just with the hotkey doing an all-in on other table. The all-in went to the table that just started, and it just started and I was in the button, so my action was instantly applied to the table. So I shoved king 10 off. There was an opponent that called with ace 3 suited. And then the other opponent called with ace king off. And of course I luckboxed with, I think, two tens on the flop, so... And these lines that I'm going to be taking, they're also dependent on how aggressive I think the opponents are going to be 3-betting and how often I'm just going to get the pot if I'm min-raising there. But I think that that's one of the most important things for a aspiring poker player, is to learn to control your emotions. Because poker is a cruel master, and it's going to affect you a lot. And there will be, like, the randomness is going to affect you, that you will be running worse than you would ever imagine possible. But there will be also the more dangerous version of that. You will be running better than you ever thought that would be possible. And when you are running better, you are never thinking that you are running better than ever. You are thinking that now I'm finally getting what I deserve from the poker tables. And now it's all about my skill and not about my run. And that's the point that really many poker players go broke. Or go busto. Really nice cooler on the Magus guy. And as you know, in these games there are absolutely no antes. So if you are dropping to a really low stacks situation and you are having some time before the big blind hits, you can afford to wait. And unlike sit and goes, there's no point in waiting that the other guys are going to be fighting against each other, because you are not getting money if the other guys are fighting. In normal sit and goes, practically it's always going to be a nice situation when opponents are fighting each other, because then you know that you are going to earn some money and you don't have to risk like anything. Now I'm trying to get this guy because I think that this guy isn't going to be one of the best players. So I'm trying to like min-raise and trying to entice him in the pot. And I'm trying to bet small now and then bet a bit bigger on the turn. And as I said, we are going to see some interesting action in the future. And if you are tilting on what happens on the tables, that would have been a prime spot that first you are going to lose with aces, against 7-4 suited, and just afterwards you are going to shove a hand that's going to be an easy shove, and the other player calls with the dominating hand. So, but you shouldn't worry, it will come back and those tables will be turned. Neo1186 said, would flatting aces be an option, or would it be too much slow play? I think that would be too much slow play, because... And now it's an interesting situation when this guy disconnects, because that's one of the greatest situations when there's a player that's almost out. If you are getting a disconnected player, it's like no variance, grind him down. And I hope now that I can go for the grind him down phase. But I like to re-raise a bit with aces there, so that there will be a sidepot forming. Because if there's no sidepot, I pretty much can't bluff the flop there. And for a notion, in these games, at least on Poker Tracker 4, the EV adjusted graph does not work. And it doesn't work because you'll see what's at price only when the first two positions have been decided. So all of those, if you are going to heads up or you are going to win the tournament, all of those tournaments are calculated with the correct price pool. But if you are not, or if you are ending your tournament three-handed, then you are getting it analyzed like it would be a 2x tournament. So there will be a bias in the all-in adjusted EV, so that the all-in adjusted EV, at least for now, will look like it's going to be too little for Spinet Goes. And if you like to know your EV at Spinet Goes, that is only like how good you are playing and not how good you are spinning, like how good you are going, not how good you are spinning, then I'm recommending that you read the article and you are comparing how many chips you are winning per game and how many EV adjusted chips you are winning per game, because that's going to be something that you can utilize, and that's something that works. And like XXX said, like these villains. And this is actually a player that I'm labeling instantly. And when the opponent hasn't when three-handed, the opponent hasn't opened nearly anything, I'm going to be really tight against this kind of opponent. It doesn't make any sense to... And... well, what can you say? These games are sometimes nice. And there are players that are... I haven't understood any other explanation than players are frustrated that they haven't hit better than 2x game, because in some 2x games I can see just opponents open shoving the first hand with like any two cards, and then it's like when I'm calling with the decent hand, then it's like it can be something like 6-4 off, and it can be from the button from the SB, like pretty much everywhere. So I have seen some interesting situations in these games. And that also requires that you are going to be calling wider, and that's something that will increase the variance because you are going to need to be calling wider in those situations. Really interesting to see that Stukiernik has changed his game like completely from three-handed, or then it's just variance and he had got some really good hands. Oh well, no matter anymore. We got the game, and now let's spin, spin, spin! I think on Tuesday they updated these Spinat Goes and they added the text like deal making unavailable. I think that there were multiple games that the players just wanted to make a deal so bad and the moderators weren't like completely aware on can you make a deal or not, and then they made this deal making unavailable sign here to clarify the situation that you can't make a deal if you are hitting the highest amounts. And I'm going to think that I'm going to have the best hand, and I'm going to think that I can have value out of something like an 8 or ace high or... And when the opponent has checked twice, I think that he'll never have a good hand, so... I think that's one of those mandatory spots to try to steal it, and there are some straight draws that are open, and because I think pretty much everything busted, I'm going to add a second barrel on the river and get the pot home. Because there shouldn't be anything good in Becky Ace's hand after those actions. Or there shouldn't be anything that she or he wouldn't fold. Actually, this one I could also have raised, like raised to 60 and go from there. In general, just with this kind of hands that I'm knowing pretty well on the flop what I'm hitting, or am I hitting anything, I like to keep the stack to pot ratio as high as possible so that I'll have more wiggling room. And like Neo118 said that the Spinat Go frustration shove and it's all about the spin. Like, I think there are players that are playing this game just for the spins. So like, if you are getting the 2x, you'll either double up and make it worthwhile, or then you are out of it and then you can spin again. So I don't know, there might be something interesting. And only 14 bucks. That's something that will happen a ton of the time. Oh, now Korpistor is hooked. Actually, I probably need to call here because I think that my king high is going to be on a double paired board is going to be good enough. Some of the time. But now we have got Korpistori hooked on Spinat Goes. Pretty soon we are going to be bidding for the spinatgopro.com. Because there has been one other coach that has also thought that RT is going to be good games to grind, and the Spinnet Go Pro page now has a mop company, like the cleaning device. In here I think that this Smartje guy is I can have him. I can have him bluff some, and this is horrible. This is horrible. Because it's completely possible that he has a king after the limp. It's possible, but luckily not that likely. But that was like a spot that if you can, in the spin that goes, if you can like have a hate my life moment, and the worst hate my life moment, and when the spin shows you $14, like now. I actually noticed that PokerStars can't make the $100 spin at goes. Because there's only room for 5 numbers in the spinner. They'll probably need to purchase a new spinner for PokerStars to be able to spin for 6 figures. But these games, if you are thinking about these games, like now there have been 80 tourneys with prize pool of 1,200, so it means that about 1.6 million $1 spin at goes have been played, and these games have been online, I think, 5 days or close to a week. Actually, I think that they are pretty close to a week now, but 1.6 million means that there is going to be more than 200,000 $1 spin at goes that have run already. So when you are thinking about it and letting it sink in, it's going to be quite insane how many of these games are running. It's actually really close that should I be shoving this Jack Queen off. Because I think that I have some fold equity on this guy, and Veggie Aces, when he just calls, he's going to be pretty dead money. I'll probably have to mark that one. And Chakal, yeah, that was a nice call when it worked, but it was a horrible spot. I only required to be right in about a bit more than 1 in 3, like 35% of the time. But still, with only ace high, it's a horrible spot that the opponent put me through. And Kuba, it's bad play just to call with Queen Jack. I don't like it that much in general to be just calling there, because the effective stack sizes are going to be really low compared to the pot size, and I think that it's going to be really hard to play Queen Jack off profitably after that. And I'm going to try to get a small value. I don't believe that my opponent will have a queen here. No, he'll got something even better. And so Corpusor is almost tilted already. And now in here, even though we are having 2 pairs, the relative value of our hand is really bad, because opponent just needs a jack to be ahead of us. So there's an opportunity for opponent to have a... And it's really hard to get any value out of it. I thought that if she had a 10 or a queen, I might get some value, but it's pretty doubtful. And in these games I should remember that if my opponents are betting big, it usually means that they are having exactly what they are going to have exactly what it's looking like. Don't make frustration sounds. Yeah, that's something that if you are playing these games, I think the worst mistake that I have heard of is that someone had a $15 game that went to a $18,000 prize pool, and they tried to negotiate a deal that they couldn't negotiate, and when they couldn't negotiate the deal, one player just sit out. So that's something that is not recommended in these games by any means. In here I'm going to have showdown value, so... And I know that against this player I'm going to get a really cheap showdown, and because another ace hit, she hasn't done really anything, I'm trying to get some really, really thin value. But this is probably among the best players that you would wish for in these games. An opponent that is going to be folding a lot, like willing to see flops and like weakly limping, then folding a ton. And that's pretty much what I was counting on by shoving this Queen 5. And I don't know if I'm seeing a frustration shover here. A guy that has just been attacking with that all of his actions have been aggressive thus far on 3 hands. And I have seen players that have been just shoving like every hand in these games and carrying it on towards heads up. But we'll need to remember that it's just 3 hands, like everything can happen. He did have 4 hands of aggressive actions after each other, and the time that we called him, he got something like, or not even something like, he got the... He got exactly Ace-King suited. And Deia is in a satellite to a tourney that she already busted out from. That's interesting. I think that satellite is going to only be tourney dollars for you. In this kind of situation, when I'm with Ace-King, I'm rather min-raising, but when opponent just mostly calls, for something like small or middle pocket pairs, I'm rather shoving because they're going to be harder to play post-flop anyway. And this time the opponent did like the first aggressive action. And now I'm going to try to make him fold. So I don't think that pre-flop the opponent would fold, but post-flop with that kind of stack depth, with a... I don't know what's that called because I'm not even stopping because the opponent limps. So, would that be a crawl and go or something? I can't say it's a spin-at go as either because we are playing a spin-at go. This is an interesting moment because I'm 5 big blinds deep, but when my opponent has like folded pretty much every hand, I pretty much just like can't be opening. Like even 7 deuce off I think would be a decent enough hand to play there against just this kind of opponent that just folds his stack away. And I think that because the opponent has been so tight that I can min-raise fold, but I probably can't shove there. But it's going to be a really adjustment on just against that exact opponent. And that was a really interesting heads up because the opponent had like pretty much all the worst leaks you can do in a heads up situation. And Neo asks on the crawl at go, like when we are heads up it's a different situation in there, but when the button limps, then if you are just checking yourself and you are having something like 2.5 big blinds, the 2.5 big blinds might make the opponent on the big blind to fold because you are getting the additional fold equity there. Also, if you are having more than 2 big blinds, because you are reopening the betting for the first limper, so you are going to get more fold equity 40 against the big blind by going all in there than you would otherwise with your stack size get. So it's it's dependent on the players behind you as well. And now there was probably the longest silent moment. I'm just trying to search my head like what's going to be in. What have I forgot to say out of Spinet Goes? There was probably something still left to think, but well, let's go on the other direction then. When there isn't that much happening on the games right now, I need to remind you that it really helps us if you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, if you are liking our YouTube videos, if you are joining our forum and being being active on the forums. Not being aggressive. Be nice on the forums. Be nice but active. But it really helps us to bring even more content for you in the future. The wider viewership and the wider reception we'll get for the forum, the more content we can produce in the future. And I should probably tell Deja that I can't win 8,400 bucks from one game. It's going to be like, if you are getting the 100 times or 200 times or 1,000 times the buy-in as the main prize, the second and third place finishers will also get 1/10 of what the winner gets. So if I'm getting the 8,400 400 spin, it doesn't mean that I'm playing that the first prize would be 8,400 bucks. But it would mean that the first prize would be 7,000 bucks, and then the two other participants will get 700 bucks each. I have a double gut shot here. And that wasn't a good card for me. Like the 10 of clubs would be a worse card. But it's something that if you have something else in mind while you are coaching, like if you are saying like why you need to fold in this table, then you are probably folding at the other table as well. And now I need to stop explaining and start being aggressive on that table. But when I'm thinking about these games, that like the key point in Spinet Goes is to be aggressive, is to get those loose player chips and aggressively value bet those guys, then it's going to be really hard to discuss about something else. And 255, I'm going to require about 35% equity here, and 7-8 suited, I'm going to get it pretty much always. Because I'm practically never dominated. And like in here, I got enough pre-flop equity for sure. Really? Oh well, it was only 14 bucks. But as you probably have already seen on the forum thread, that out of the first 1,000 Spinet Ghost $7 buy-in ones, I won a bit over $800. So these games have been treating me pretty nicely. And it has been... I think that if I wouldn't have won the right games, I would be something like $330 up or something. Really nasty river turn number 3. I think that I can get my opponent to fold sometime, and there will be so few of those sevens in his range. And I got my opponent to fold when there was a split on the table. And Oculus Rift, shouldn't it be a cheap virtual reality headset or something? I thought that Oculus Rift shouldn't be expensive. I know the whole company is pretty expensive, but just one headset shouldn't be that expensive. And now because my coaching sessions are usually about everything in life, I must tell you that I have read a few interesting studies about happiness. And in those happiness studies, like, people mostly use their money for stuff. But there's a problem. The stuff you have, it doesn't have the connection for your happiness. Like, if you are having a nice car, let's say you are driving a really nice BMW, you are getting used to it so quickly, and it doesn't really have any connection to your happiness after a while. It's going to be it's going to be that if you are asked that are you happy, it doesn't matter what kind of car you own, for example. But if you are asked that how satisfied you are with your car, having a more expensive car will make you answer better to that question. But it doesn't make you any happier. And that's something that is pretty interesting, because people are using like 80 to 90% of their money for things that are having really pretty little effect on their happiness, and they're using pretty little money on things that are having a tangible effect on their happiness. And experiences are something that are going to have tangible experience or tangible difference for your happiness. So you should, if you are thinking about how to use your money for optimal happiness, you should be thinking about experiences. And also something that will make you feel better is charity, which is something that's interesting as a whole. And I probably should do something like a happiness one-on-one for poker players. And as Neo said, that the things you own end up owning you, that might be a really good way to put it, especially if you are buying stuff on credit. Like if you are buying stuff on credit, then the stuff you own is actually owning you, because the stuff you own, like you can't just stop then doing and like downshift if you are required to make certain kind of payments every month. And so then the things you own will end up deciding how you use your time. So if I'm going to spin the 7,000 bucks and if I'm going to win the game, it's going to be on the experiences side. Actually, this is probably something that would be better to just check behind. And this is also something that's really interesting, that there's like so polarized players that you can have in a single tournament. Like in this game, we are having a really loose passive player, and we are having a player that has been playing 12 hands in 3-handed game without finding a hand he would like enough that he would play it. Wow, that was nice. And in these games, because it's less likely that you are going to get the pot pre-flop, because the opponents are likely to be calling that much. Some hands that are not going to flop that well, like the pair of deuces, the ace-3 off, I like to shove rather than min-raise, because even though I'm going to have position, they are going to be really hard hands to play. I think that in this hand that I'm going to have enough outs for the river to be calling this, but it's going to be really close. It would have been better on the on the flop when I know that with an open-ender I'm going to have enough outs for sure. And Chip Leader asks, is min raising an adjustment or standard play? I think in these games that when we are starting with 25 BBs deep, I don't think it makes much sense to do anything else than min raising. The amount of folds you are going to get are going to be really similar with min raises and 3x raises or 2.5x raises, so I think in Spinet Goes min raising is pretty much the way to go. Because then you're leaving yourself more space to play. Play post flop. Now I'm starting to think that when should we end this session? We started about 15 minutes late, but I don't want this to be over 2 hours, so I'm actually opening the last games right now. And I'm now doing 4 tables for a while, and we got the first 10x game. Yeah. And I think that like these games are probably like, I'm used to saying that men are like the old Windows operating systems, that they can only recognize 16 colors or use 16 colors, but I think these Spinet Ghosts, they are pretty sneaky, because I must say that I'm getting pretty good at recognizing different shades of green right now. Like I'm instantly knowing, even though there isn't much difference between the 6x or 10x, but I'm pretty instantly recognizing if it's a 10x or 6x, and I for sure wouldn't recognize the difference in shades before like 2 days ago. So it's going to be sneaky because the differences are so small between the different games, and now I'm instantly recognizing those differences. Ace-4 off, fold button, why? I shouldn't fold button with the ace-4. 4 for sure. I didn't fold button. The ace-4 was folded to me on the big blind. Oh, I folded h4 on the button. Well, that's something that I shouldn't do. Yeah, I noticed just now that there were 2 ace-4s right after each other. And this was a pretty nice catch. And when opponent 3-bets me, I'm going to 4-bet him on the flop, and of course I'm never bluffing here. Like this is 4-bet bluff the river. Nope. But in general, I have tried to adjust on... Today I analyzed a ton of hands in these games, and I have tried to adjust a bit on how much I'm going to raise on, especially the small blind. It's not as profitable that it's going to be in a 6-max hyper or 9-max hyper when opponents are for one, opponents are generally folding more on the big blind, and number 2, there is no antes in play, so the opponents are making a bigger mistake in the 9-max or 6-max hypers when they are folding their big blinds against the small blind min bet. But in these games, when opponents are folding so little and there is no antes, it's going to be something that I'm trying to adjust out of. And that seems to be taking a toll of my button ranges as well. But the button and small blind ranges should be pretty similar, or they should at least be closer together. And now I'm hating it when the opponent just check calls me. Because I think that he or she will have some kind of showdown equity, and if they got a draw, they are there with the 9. And when there is a second 9, if they are having some kind of a gut shot, they are pretty much... And ace deuce off, solid play. Yeah, for the opponent it was pretty interesting. I have no hands on this guy, so I'm going to be calling this king 5 suited, but I don't like it that much. But when it's the first hand, it's going to be... And IXX says that he has played several hundred jackpots at FTP, and every time I have it, say 4 times or 10 times game, it seems like the opponents will go super tight and fold way too much. You have the same feeling in these games. I don't know, I think perhaps in the 10x games the opponents are folding a bit more, but I don't see any difference in, let's say, 4x or 6x games. I'm going to be calling the river, especially when it's a 4. I don't think that the opponent is going to have a better hand so often here. Hard spots. I think that in that situation the opponent will most likely be betting more him or herself, and on the other hand, I don't think that the opponent would have that much to hit, but, well, this time he had the ace 5 off, so... And Neo asks that what's my calling range when someone shoves in the first few hands? It depends if it's the button or the small blind. For small blind, it's something like ace 9, ace 5 suited. Let's say king queen or king jack suited, and then it's going to be something like 8s or 8s plus, or actually it's probably 6s plus. And for the button, it's going to be slightly tighter than that. But especially the small blind shoves are going to be pretty... And this is something that's... will be a bit over Nash ranges, but I think in general opponents are folding a bit too much on shoves there. But it depends a bit, I think, in these games that the shoves are so mixed. Like, there are guys that are shoving queens or ace-king suited, and then there are guys that are shoving something like 9-4 off and queen 10 off and stupid stuff like that. And Chip Leader got to a really good point that we can do some adjustments. We can pretty easily see that if opponent is likely to be really loose passive, or it's likely to be an aggressive player, we can see it pretty quickly. But other than that, it's going to be that we are playing with pretty standard ranges, and getting or tuning your standard ranges is going to be something that's going to be really important in these games. So it's going to be a lot that you are looking at the opponents as a group and what the opponents in general are doing. Bit interesting that my opponent is 3xing so much. Nice. And now we are going with King Queen suited. I just hope for some run good right now. 10 or a king or a queen, and it's easy game. Out of those 10x games, I have probably lost like 1. It might be 2, but I remember that I have lost 1 of those, so... It will be a pretty interesting graph that we played for a bit less than 2 hours. Something like 1 hour and 40 minutes. And we played for a bit more tournament. For some reason, for these Spinet Goes, it takes longer for my poker tracker to start importing those hands, and like the 70 buck game isn't here. So, or right now it is. So, oh well. But that's something that's a good advice that win the big ones. As I said, that effectively I haven't been playing rake-free these games thus far. So, and if I'm looking at the ITM, like, if my ITM would be 41.38, my ROI would be something like close to 20%. So, but even then, my ROI would be close to 20%. But my real ROI for this session was 37.93, which means that I ran pretty good in what games I did win. And we can pretty much look that I won. I must say that I probably won more than my fair share of these $28 games, because I should get like more than 3 times as much of these $14 games than these $28 games, but I won twice as much of these $14 games, or less than twice as much than these $28 games. And of course I won one of those 70 buck games again, so that's my 11th 70 buck game I have won. Easy game for winning the right games. And I will be carrying on the strategy article series, or actually more of an article series on Spinet Goes. And the next article would be on simulations of different spin and go players, and some advice on bankroll management and what you can expect when you are playing Spinet Goes. It's going to be pretty interesting because the structure is so completely different than on any other tournament. So it's really interesting to think even these games. And I think this is the end, because we haven't got any questions to the end. I hope you had fun with these Spinet Goes. They're a fun structure, and especially if you are with your mobile phone or tablet somewhere else, they are a really good game to play. Especially because you are not getting good sample on anyone. So you are not giving that much edge out when you are playing with a tablet or playing with a mobile phone. So that will be something that I'm going to be doing in the future as well, that I'm going to play those Spinet Goes. Spinet Goes on a mobile device, because that's probably the place that they're going to be the best enjoyed. But yeah, hope to see you, as many of you online next Sunday, and I don't even know what I'm going to discuss next Sunday. But we'll see next Sunday on Sit and Goes, and on Wednesday it will be Kyberi with his pot limit Omaha night. And that's about it for our next week's English program. And this Spin and Go broadcast will be really soon on YouTube. And I hope if you have some questions about this, you'll ask on the forums and you'll view this video on YouTube and hopefully like the video on YouTube as well. And thanks for everyone that chatted. It's always really nice to have an active chat here. And sometimes some of those silent moments will go away if I have a good question to answer after that. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. If you are going to sleep, have a good night. And if you are going to play some Spin and Goes, I hope you'll hit the 1000 times multiplier today. Have a good night.